version. Maria Braun.
Is everybody good? Alright. So, our research question was, is Maria Braun the protagonist from the film The Marriage of Maria Braun, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, if I said that correctly? Is she a feminist hero? And I would like to argue that she is not a feminist hero. For a couple of reasons. First, she only gains temporary power through the manipulation of men, which creates an illusion of power, not real power. Second, she does become wealthy and successful. However, she doesn't do this for herself or for her own personal growth. She does it in order to please her husband. And finally, she allows, and at some points even encourages herself to become the subject of men. To my first point of the illusionary power, this quote from Osicki is, "The film reveals this identity as constituted by Maria's collaboration with white male power at the expense of the other, Bill and Richard. To this end, I will discuss the ways in which the film configures Maria as achieving an illusionary, temporary, and derivative power that is purchased through her manipulation of the men in her life." Some examples of this from the film are when she uses Bill as the provider for her family in order to get the things that she wants, and then ultimately kills him, which I thought it was interesting. When he dies, her power that she gained through him also dies because her husband comes back, but then he just goes to jail. And secondly, when Oswald hires her, she manipulates him and uses her charm in order to grow in his company and become more important to him. She even says to Herman Braun, her husband, after explaining why she sleeps with Oswald, she says, "Because he's my employer and I'm dependent on him, I wanted to beat him to it and keep the upper hand," which I thought was very interesting because she knows that her way of manipulation is through her sexual affluence, which is the only way that she'll be able to gain power over Oswald and in his company. By doing this, her means to do this is by using the concept of women as an image or as a spectacle of men. And this quote from Alcesser is, "Above all, as victims of the world of men, with their victimization greatly aggravated by being the object of look, by being implicated in the dehumanizing, commodifying power of the spectacle, and thus thwarted in their self-view, by having no other choice than constituting themselves as objects to be looked at in order to become subjects." And I thought this quote was very powerful in the way that it recognizes that this is one of the only means of the ways that women of this time could become powerful and be looked at as more than just a pretty woman, but this needs to be done. They need to use this image or spectacle in order to gain the power. And she does this most obviously by becoming a prostitute, which is just putting herself out there to be taken advantage of by men. And secondly, in the training scene where she first meets Oswald, she uses her beauty, her first-class status, and her mystery in order to entice him because she knows of his status and of his wealth in order to gain something from him. My second point is that she is gaining all of this wealth and affluence for her husband, Herman. How she says multiple times how she's learning new things and gaining this wealth and getting these jobs so that he'll have a good wife to look forward to and to be proud of. She doesn't do it for her own account. And although she does become successful and she does become wealthy, it is this temporary power, as I said before, that she's earning through the manipulation of men. And it's not for herself, but rather to seek approval, almost. And she exemplifies this by buying a house and saying that it's for him when he gets out of jail, and doing all these, as you can see, these are quotes from the movie, is she's saying to Herman, "I've led this life for you," and so he has something to look forward to and be proud of. And another interesting point that I found was in the Guardian article titled "The Bitter Tears of Fassbinder's Women," which was a personal account, or portrayed the personal life of the director. It says that his view on marriage was that it was a tyranny. So I think that that's accurately displayed in this movie in the way that male dominance is emphasized. Even in the title of the movie, The Marriage of Maria Braun, it's putting the protagonist, Maria, in the context of her husband, as if she's not her own person. And finally, by Maria making herself a subject of men, this is an example of her willingly becoming a subject of men when she's working in the bar, working as a prostitute. This is a quote from Elsasser. He says, "By opting for the dress with which to please the new powers that be, for the sake of success becomes someone else's, assimilating herself, prostituting herself to the hedonistic but Philistine other." So I think this is the most obvious example of her subjecting herself to men, but because she's buying a short dress to show off her body and emphasizes her sexuality in order to get the job and also to manipulate the men in the bar, such as Bill, to get what she wants. And another example of her unwillingly being the subject of men is the contract between Herman and Oswald, basically in which Oswald traded his fortune in order to be alone with her until he dies for Harmon, which, even though these men both claim to have loved her, this contract just shows that she's nothing more than just a piece to be exchanged between men, traded for wealth. And this quote from Osicki says, "The closing moments of the film depict her as a victim of patriarchal and of her own machinations, suggesting that all along her power had been illusionary." So I really believe that this quote sums up most of what I've been trying to say, in that she uses men to find this false power, but uses her looks and her image in order to manipulate them to get what she wants. But all along, her power does decline. It's an illusion and it's temporary. So in conclusion, she uses men to get power. Although she does become successful and wealthy, it doesn't last. And also, it's not for herself, it's for her husband, in order to please him. And finally, she willingly and also unwillingly subjects herself to men. Thank you.